Find how you best connect with people, and then take the possibly uncomfortable step to put yourself in a scenario in which you function and connect with people best.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to What Matters Media. My name is Matthew Baker, and today I talk with my friend Jeff Stout all about connecting with people. Him being an introvert, me being an extrovert is really cool to have both perspectives. And he really talked about how he grew in that ability to connect with people. But we also talked about having a identity in Jesus over kind of other lifestyles and other important things to us. So thanks for joining us. Let's get to the conversation. How's it going, Jeff?
Great, Matt. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for being here in the chair.
Thank you for having me here in the chair.
Yeah, I'm glad it worked out because it was.
Dude, so glad.
Man, the schedule has been wild. But it's Jeff is one of my friends that I talk to more on the phone than in person, and you've been here for me a lot, and I'm really thankful for you. So, why don't you tell the people about the first time we met, just so they get to know you a little bit.
We were at the mansion, the Wild Heart Ministries mansion in Harrisburg, up the hill.
Yeah.
And I think you were doing some plumbing work for him.
Yep. And
I was just in town because I was dating my now wife, Courtney.
Long distance.
Long distance from Ohio.
Yeah.
But she was working, it was probably a Saturday night or something like that, Friday or Saturday night, and she was working. So I was just hanging out. And one of us or both of us separately had plans with our friend who shall remain unnamed.
Ben Counts, who is also on the channel.
Okay. Shout out to Ben, who's also been in the chair. And then he was sick. So not only did he realize that he may have double booked with us both, he then ditched us. Yeah. Because he wasn't feeling well or any other reason.
To be fair to him on my part, I just would show up at the mansion and do stuff and this assume that he was going to hang out. So it might have been me assuming he could hang out and you actually having plans with him and he was sick. And I remember I was standing on the stairs.
Yep.
And you're like, I was like, well, I guess Ben's sick. I don't know what I'm doing. Are you doing anything for dinner? I'm hungry.
Everybody else had left that we were hanging out with or doing work with or whatever.
And we didn't really have much of a conversation before that.
No, very little.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I'm Jeff. Hey, I'm Matt. Good to meet you. And then we went out to eat because we were hungry dudes because it was dinner time.
Yeah. And that's when we kind of became friends, which is really cool.
Very cool.
So today we wanted to kind of talk about connections and connecting with people. And one of the reasons is because you're one of the people that I've found to be great with that. But from your perspective, that's not always been true, right?
Very, very true. Yeah. So I am very naturally an introvert. And I love my alone time. Like when my wife has plans on any given night, it's just like my favorite thing in the world to not leave the house, not have friends over, not do anything, and just enjoy being alone.
Yeah.
And she thinks it's super weird because she's an extrovert.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's nothing that I would rather have right now than alone time.
That's so funny.
But I digress.
And one of those alone nights, I think it would be fun to just jump into me outing myself for ruining your birthday surprise. But one of those many nights, it was when I needed the connection the most, was I showed up at your house and I was a total wreck. That week, that month, that maybe even 6 months was just a really hard time of my life. And I show up at your house a day before your birthday party, surprise birthday party.
Surprise birthday party. that my wife of 1 year had set up.
She was so excited to give you a surprise birthday party.
And then again, I was alone,
Yeah.
hanging out, enjoying my alone time. I think I had some movies on deck, some manly action movies on deck that I wanted to watch. And I believe I was actually like 20 minutes into one, and then there's a knock at my door. I'm like, who's this? Like, nobody just randomly knocks on doors anymore. You know, especially like in the evening.
Yeah.
So I walked downstairs, and I hadn't seen you in a year at this point in time, since my wedding.
Yeah.
And I open up the door, and I go, Matt, dude, so good to see you. I figured you were just somewhere, like you were on your way going to hang out at the mansion or coming back from the mansion, since my apartment was kind of a in-between.
Yeah.
At the time, in between the mansion and where you live up in this area.
Yeah.
And then once you realize that there's something kind of amiss, you go, hey, is there a party here?
Oh, man.
I go, is there supposed to be a party here? Maybe tomorrow?
Yeah. Looked at my schedule, and it was a day early.
For a surprise birthday party.
Yes. So I surprised you before you surprised.
So you did. You did very much so surprise me. And then below the surprise.
Yeah. But in that, like, then you decided, and the funny thing is, you told me this today about feeling like your introverted side. Some reason, I feel like I can be an observant person, but I also can, just like anybody, not really pick up on certain things. I wouldn't have pinned you as like an extreme introvert, especially because you've showed me so much care in the times where an natural introvert who identifies that and like lives into that would totally not be. And like that time, you could have easily been like, hey,
I'm so tired.
I'll see you tomorrow. Like, you just wrecked my birthday surprise, and I'm gonna have to like somehow talk to my wife and disappoint her. But you said, hey, I guess since you're here, why don't we hang out? And listen to me blabber for a long time. So you
fell apart a little bit at my kitchen table, and I said, dude, like, we have to do dinner because we're hungry, so.
Yeah, let's go grab some
We're
dinner.
obviously not done with this conversation.
Yeah.
I believe we had Greek food that night.
It was some great Greek food. I don't remember what it was called, but.
It's Simply Greek.
Yeah.
In Hershey.
So good.
Yep.
Check it out.
Check it out.
If you're in Hershey.
We actually tried to get them to cater our wedding.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they said, sorry. Like, this was right after COVID. Like, they just didn't have the manpower to
Yeah, that makes sense.
cater and keep their restaurant open.
Yeah, they're already struggling
Cool,
enough.
yeah.
Oh, man.
So, so as an introvert, I remember specifically in my early 20s, one time a very, very extroverted friend of mine who had a small group at his house that I would go to, he told me straight up, he said, Jeff, it makes me uncomfortable that you don't talk much, if any, at small group.
Interesting.
And I had never really thought of like, that, like, I was certainly a lot shyer in my early 20s, but I certainly wasn't a miserable or mean person, So I just kind of like sat and took in, when people were talking about, especially when I didn't, have things to input about. So that kind of got me thinking, like, okay, maybe I need to actually put in effort into, conversation, like push myself a little bit just to be a more conversationally minded, open, just kind of an open person, or at least so I'm perceived as a little more of an open person, for the benefit of like connection and everything that goes on around me. And then, so that was kind of a long journey of not only putting an effort into just simply like talking more, but growing and being more comfortable, in my own thoughts and ability to speak, which ended up being quite a journey. And I'm sure there were many phases in my 20s and even into my early 30s where there were still significant times of growth to make me a individual who is better at human connection and better at showing that like I care about people through talking with them and having interactive conversation with them.
Yeah. So that was obviously like okay, this is what someone said and this is what kind of is making me start to think about it. But did you, you also grew up, and we could have a whole conversation about the whole straight edge scene movement of like not drinking or smoking. But you kind of lived in that where it was a lot of, how you've said before, was a lot of your identity. It was like, oh, I'm hardcore, I'm straight edge, and if you're not straight edge, you're an idiot, pretty much, right? Would that be pretty fair?
That was my early 20s mindset, yeah, like late teens, early 20s mindset, kind of, yeah.
Would you say that started to change before you even started going to this small group? Or would you say that was like kind of in tandem?
That was definitely before.
Okay.
My mindsets started to change. My frustration towards people who weren't in a straight edge lifestyle certainly started to change through a conversation with a friend who lives in Maine before I moved to Maine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what was around that conversation?
So my friend who had moved to Maine about a year or two before me, who still lives in Maine. Shout out to Tim. I had went to visit him one winter, and we were just talking, and he was straight edge for quite a while. And then so we were just talking in his kitchen one day and talking about the Lord and devotion to Him. And I think how this, at least how it transpired in my life, this change, and he kind of changed his lifestyle. Not that he at the time had stopped being straight edge or stopped healthy living, but it had stopped being an identity for him. Yeah. Which is definitely a big thing in the straight edge scene. Like it is a big part of your identity, and it certainly was for me.
Was that a surprise for you to see him change his identity around it, or from not having his identity around it? No, because we had a big long dialogue about it, and
and like I said, at the time he wasn't even like he hadn't went 180 and started like drinking and doing drugs and smoking or anything like that. Yeah. It had just stopped being his core identity. Yeah. And so how this ended up transpiring in my life was I realized that it was such a huge part of my identity that it had actually taken place. It had actually taken like the number one identity point of my life over even loving the Lord or being a Christian. Yeah, yeah. And so that was kind of just like I don't want to say it was a terrifying quite revelation. Yeah. But it was certainly one that it was a revelation that I didn't take lightly. Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, from that point in time on, it didn't take a whole lot for that to change. I didn't have to change. It wasn't like a lifestyle change. It was more like a mindset change at that point in time. Yeah. Like, wait, I do love the Lord, actually.
Because not drinking, smoking, and eating healthy is all good things.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, it's not something you want to stop doing.
Yeah.
But
certainly, there was a lot of anger and frustration that came along with that being my identity. Just being frustrated with people whose identity that wasn't. Yeah. especially friends who, I had several friends who had that identity and then, gotten into the party scene. But anyways.
Yeah.
So.
And so there's a start of a life change and heart change, mindset change that kind of started with getting out of the identity of straight edge as being like a full identity thing, and then picked up at the small group, which is cool to see, like how God does, like they seem almost disconnected because they're totally different scenarios, but both of them kind of, in my perspective, led you towards connecting with people, because you probably wouldn't have took that other person's opinion very, very strongly if you still were like, yeah, but people that aren't straight edge are idiots, right?
Yeah, maybe. I think it was certainly one of the big beginnings of a softening of my human heart. Like my teenage human heart of just being open to people and the world around me and being less egotistical, because that's just a big thing of being a teenager. Like every teen is a little bit to a lot of bit egotistical, and it just kind of comes with that age
part of life
range. Range. Yeah, it's just part of life. And so there were so that came in my early 20s, and that was certainly probably one of a transition that helped me into just being a more accepting, loving, and lovable individual. So yeah, then into my mid and late 20s, and just having I have a few really amazing friends that are especially committed to personal growth and really awesome. Connecting with people, and they became, I think through great friendship with them, they became heroes of mine. Yeah. Because I was like, man, like I want to be as committed to personal growth and aware of myself that I can pursue personal growth as like my friend Derek.
Yeah.
Like he's awesome and people love him and he connects so well with people and he cares about people so well.
It's so good. I mean, that's such a good point to have like good people in your life. Because if you have to have people that you're pulling up behind you, and you got to have people that are pulling you up.
100%.
Because like without that, well, first, there's no one for you to kind of practice on having connection or being compassionate when it's always just someone who is giving to you. Because it's even Jesus talks about like when you do something expecting to be repaid, then what credit is that to you? You know? So there's still value in connecting with people that you know are going to bring value in your life. But the real test is when you do it for the people that don't necessarily bring you value, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you are.
Oh, I was just going to ask, like, what are some, like, super practical things that you've learned throughout your life in connection, in connecting with people?
That is an awesome question. For me, like, I've had plenty of friends that I see value in, and I want to connect with them because they just have innate value as human beings. Yeah. But they're really hard to have conversation with, and I'm sure everybody has that kind of person. The people who haven't come out of their shells yet, who are introverts, who haven't taken the time to be good or great at conversation or connecting in their lives, but are friendly people. So in those cases, you have to. It's nice to have some questions to fall back on.
Okay.
just like that you always have on deck in your mind, that will kind of open up doors in other people's lives to talk. Because one of the not so secrets about human beings is we like to talk about ourselves.
Yep, for sure.
So that's kind of one way to get somebody to talk is ask them questions about their self. Stop talking about yourself and ask them questions and start talking about themselves.
Yeah.
So what do you do? And then from that question, even if whether you know a little bit, a lot, or nothing about what somebody does, you can then branch questions off of that. Like, have you been doing that for long? Do you enjoy it?
Yeah.
Externally process some ideas about it. Like develop an idea and say express your idea and then go is that actually real? Is that how you experience your job on a daily basis?
Yeah.
I imagine X would be cool about your job.
Yeah.
I think those are kind of defaults for me.
That's a great starting place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because like you said, people want to be valued, want to be understood, want to be heard, They want to, because what you were more saying is that people want to talk about themselves, but they want to talk about themselves because they want to be understood.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
And they don't want to be seen as someone who's not worthy of being understood. Or if you just go and be like, how's it going? I'm Jeff. Did you know I'm a truck driver?
Yeah.
But I'm actually a mathematician, and I'm also do all these crazy stuff. If you just start talking all about Jeff, it's someone might be like, oh, that's cool, but they might never want to talk to you again.
Yeah.
They might be like, oh, I met this guy Jeff, he's really cool, but they might never say to Jeff, hey Jeff, can we connect again?
Yeah. Very
So it's
one-sided conversation.
Yeah. How do you go about realizing who's a person that you want to connect with just because maybe they're alone in a room and that's where you kind of have that starter conversation, or like you said, you want to get to know them but you're not really sure how to start the conversation. How do you personally kind of go about figuring out, okay, this is someone I really want to invest in and really connect with on a deeper level, that they start to know more about me? Would you say that there's any internal processing that's going there?
Absolutely. As in, so not only, I don't think introverts and internally processing, this is another little soapbox, but I don't think that it's mutually exclusive. Introverts 100% of the time are internal processors. But I'm definitely an introvert who is an internal processor.
Yeah.
And so there's always some kind of dialogue going on in my head.
I love this because I'm the total opposite.
Yeah.
So I love hearing this.
Now, my wife is as well, as is my friend Derek that I mentioned, who I admire greatly. They are external processors, which can be challenging until you learn, as an introvert, how external processors process, and then okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I will answer your question with a practical example of something that I've actually done. So I moved to Harrisburg, where I currently live, in September of 2020. And when I moved here, I have some friends, and you were one of my friends. We met before I moved. Yeah, we definitely met long before I moved to Harrisburg. And so I moved to Harrisburg, and I had a small group that I went into, and was dating the girl who was now my wife at the time, and had some loose connections, I suppose, and some loose friendships. And a couple months into my moving here, none of those friendships really took off, and without effort turned into great friendships.
Yeah.
And I had this this revelation at one point in time. And at that point in time, I had already become adept at conversation when I need to be and when I choose to be. Because as an introvert, it is a choice for me to connect with people.
Yeah.
And so to get closer to somebody that I had previously met, at my small group, and I texted him one day and I'm like, hey Ryan, let's get lunch sometime. That being said, I had already met him obviously at small group, and had connected a little bit, and had learned a little bit about him, just through, just being in the same room as him and being around people that he was talking to and being in the same, little collective of guys standing together in a kitchen somewhere,
Yeah.
To know a little bit about him, to know that, I think this is a dude that, that I could, foster, some level of friendship with. But as an introvert, it's really hard for me to develop, significant conversation with people in a large group of people.
Yeah.
Because I just feel overwhelmed.
Yeah, for sure.
And so where I really thrive is one-on-one. Like that's how I want to get to know people, and that's how I can really, allow myself to be a good conversationalist and a good connector.
Yeah.
So we went out to lunch, and that was like the start of our friendship. And we still do that regularly. Actually, yesterday at church, we haven't hung out one-on-one in a while, and he came and he said, "Let's hang out soon." Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. That's cool.
And so we hang out one-on-one. That's awesome. So as to put that into practicals for people is find how you best connect with people, and then take the possibly uncomfortable step to put yourself in a scenario in which you function and connect with people best.
Yeah. And I would add a little bit to that. As an extrovert, external processor, total opposite kind of like personality, whatever that kind of part of our personality, is that I think ironically both sides, and maybe not ironically, but like both sides need personal connection one-on-one. And for me,
I think
it's really easy to connect in a room with people and just kind of have fun. And sometimes I'll kind of step back and kind of like just be, as I have gotten older, I've found out how to not need to be the center of the conversation all the time. So I've learned how to sit back and not have to be the front, but also not get overwhelmed in one-on-one conversation. And I've found that I am most fed by those places where I'm sitting with somebody and talking about the more important things of life. And sometimes it starts with literally eating some food because we're hungry with a random stranger, And sometimes it's come from me seeing someone in a room and being like, hey, I really value that person and what they're contributing. I want to know why. And I want to hear about this person's life more than just that they're serving or they're loving people or they're fun or they're funny or talented. But this is actually someone I want to get to know. And connection takes work. And that's the hardest part about it. Is there's no three simple steps to connection. Like it's I should say there are steps to simple connection, but there's not easy steps. It's simple but not easy.
Yeah.
Because something that's simple, it's not a lot of, it's literally just like you said, talking to somebody and showing interest and actually listening to hear and to understand, not listening to respond. And then once you respond because you've listened, it gives that person the ability to actually be heard. And I think the crux of it all is like, you actually have to care. You can't just like if you like. There's people that I've connected with that are really good at networking, but you see right through it. You're like, okay, this person's networking with me, and I can, I'll be there. I'll stand with the networker, and we'll network a little bit, but they're probably not going to get a deep into my respect or deep into my life or my circle, because networking is business.
Yep.
Connection is personal, and I think anyone who, even in business, if this was a business podcast, if you're talking about like, hey, even the best way to network is to really connect. It's not to, and to think beyond what you're getting out of the next step, and just be like, hey, this is a person to connect with, and this is somewhere we can actually move forward. So Jeff, with all of that being said, I think there's something, like there's plenty of places to connect with people. There's plenty of ways to connect, and I feel like we should be connecting with people anywhere in life. But there seems to be something about connecting around a table. Do you think there's any what's your experience with that?
Absolutely. I mean, I love food.
Yeah.
I think most people like food, just as a rule.
Yeah.
It's one of our MOs as a living creature.
Yeah.
Find food.
Yes.
But I really think that, so we're looking back to, the Bible and the life of Jesus. He put a precedence on connecting with people and sharing thoughts and having serious and intimate conversation around food.
Yeah.
We think about how many amazing messages happened, around, say, like the feeding of the 5,000.
Yeah.
That was a meal.
Yeah.
And Jesus shared some profoundly incredible spiritual truths that we still glean from.
Yeah.
And then one of his most powerful and one of his last messages was what we call the Last Supper.
Yeah.
And him and his 12 closest buddies were having dinner together.
Yeah.
And then he said, "This is how you're going to remember me when I'm gone."
Yeah.
And they're like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
He's like, "Trust me."
Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
This means more than you think.
You guys still don't get it, but this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think it's not only are we wired for it, but it's also it's kind of an easy place to connect.
Yeah.
Because there's also something else going on besides just staring somebody in the face and talking.
Yep.
You have some food, you can take a bite, munch on it, think about what you're going to say for a few seconds instead of blabbering. I love the saying that God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Yeah.
So you can listen 2 times as much as you talk.
Yeah.
And some are better than others at that.
Yeah.
And hey, we're all growing.
Yeah, for sure.
But certainly stuffing your mouth with food helps you to activate your ears a little better.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and like Jesus was considered like by his haters, he was called a glutton and a drunk, because he would spend time, and he wasn't, but he would spend, those were false accusations. But the reason they said that is because he would spend time with people, and he'd eat and drink with them, and he would.
And he'd spend time with the people who ate and drank too much, while still abstaining from it.
Yeah, exactly. Which is that he ate with the tax collectors. He ate with the people that were looked at as not worthy of his time, that were looked at as traitors or people or unclean people. But he spent time with those people, and he really led a life of compassion. And I think something that's interesting is like some people, they start with compassion and let it lead to connection. Some people, they start with connection and it leads them to having more compassion for people. But either way, I feel like they're just so connected in how we connect with people. Because if we don't have compassion, if we don't want to hear someone's story or care about their story, then all it is networking, really. I guess maybe that's it. Connection without compassion is just networking, you know?
That might be a good way to put it.
But one thing I think is interesting is that for someone who is struggling with compassion, I think start with connection. And if someone's really struggling with connection, let your compassion lead you into connection.
Yeah.
And what would you say it was for you? Would you feel like connection led first or compassion led first?
Are you asking about a particular situation or just generally?
In general,
in life?
Yeah. Or in you can talk about both if you want.
And it is really easy to actually look at specific situations and try to think instead of trying to think about my entire life. You know.
Yeah.
I think for me personally, most of the time it's connection leads to compassion. Again, bringing this back to introvertedness. I don't know if this is exclusive to introverts. This may just be a human condition thing, but just I have my own little world in my head, and it's where I enjoy being because it's comfortable. Yeah. Because it's all the things that I like, and I get to process my own thoughts inside there. But then connecting with, like, say, you, then leads me to having compassion for you and the things that you go through and the things that you care about. I think closely linked in that compassion and connection is also understanding. Like when you understand why someone cares deeply about the thing that they do, it leads you to some compassion for that person and maybe for that entire group of people. I think that that's where politics suffer a lot. Is that nobody cares to have the understanding of, okay, why do you care about this issue? Or why do you do this in life? It's just
assumption.
What you're doing does this to me, and that's why I want you to not do that.
How's that look for you, Jeff? Is that what you're thinking?
Beautiful, man. As always.
Sweet.
Beautiful.
Sounds good. So, Jeff, as we kind of finish up here, what would you say would be your one piece of advice to your 20-year-old self?
That's a good question. I think that it would be to be curious about people and to show that curiosity by asking more direct questions to them.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thanks for being here, Jeff.